الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. Inshallah, we're going to hopefully finish off the Surah Al-Fatiha, which we started last week, and just to kind of go over some of the lessons that we went over, the introduction to Al-Fatiha and the first three ayat of Surah Al-Fatiha. And the first three ayat actually consisted of kind of an introduction where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us how to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the sunnah also, we said, it added after praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you send peace and blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that Allah loves praise and Allah is merciful, yet He is also just. So that's why when He's saying, all these aspects of praise, right? Alhamdulillah, the praise be to Allah. He is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the most gracious, the most merciful. And when He says Maliki Yawmiddin, the owner of the day of judgment, He's reminding us that He is merciful, yes, but also He is someone who is just and will hold you to account for the things that you are responsible for. So inshallah, picking up from there, we'll go on to the next ayah, which is Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. And this ayah, loosely translated, is you alone we worship and you alone we seek for help. The iyaka part is actually what creates the limitation here. It's very possible that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have told us to say na'buduka wa nasta'inuka, that we worship you and we seek your help. But what the difference in that is, when you say we worship you, that doesn't mean that you don't worship anything else. When you say we seek help from you, that doesn't mean you don't seek help from anything else. So this iyaka, it limits only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The iyaka na'budu, that it is you alone completely that we worship, and you alone that completely that we seek help from, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this word na'budu, which is where the word ibadah comes from. What does that mean? What does it mean when we say that we enslave ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or we do ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So the ulama, they've described this in different ways. So some of them, Imam al-Jazairi, he says, it means to be obedient out of these things. It means to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of humility, meaning you humble yourself because He is the creator or the master of all that exists. He is the most gracious. He is the most merciful. In His hand is the day of account. He is the one that's going to give you Jannah or Jahannam, and He's going to reward you or punish you, and so on and so forth. So you humble yourself before Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. You obey Him because of that, your humility, your fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, He is Maliki Yawmiddin. Out of love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and out of an eagerness, because He is the one that has something special. Right? Eagerness to get what He has to give. All of these are components that make up or define obedience. And obedience in the sense that, na'buduka, of ibadah. That ibadah is obedience out of love, out of eagerness to get the reward, out of humility, humbleness before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and out of fear. So all of these things combined make up obedience. Right? And it may be that one element of these things is more apparent in certain moments in your life than in other moments, right? And maybe you're more fearful at certain periods. Maybe you're more humble at certain times. But all of that is obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam al-Jawzi, he says, he defines ibadah as three things: tawheed, obedience, and prayer. Tawheed again means to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, to make Him the only object of your worship, the only object of your submissiveness. Right? Obedience, again, like we defined into the quarters, and prayer, because the ibadah is a hadith of Rasulullah, the authenticity of which, again, it's an acceptable hadith, the dua huwa al-ibadah. That dua or prayer is worship. Right? And when you're praying your salah, you are basically praying to Allah, you're calling out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the act of calling out is an essence of ibadah, or an essence of worship. And also some of the linguistic meaning of the word abd itself, meaning you're enslaved or you're owned. You're enslaved or you're owned. So this is something that Allah already told us, Maliki Yawmiddin. He's the owner, right? He is the owner of the day of account, and He's the owner of everything. So if He's the owner, then we are also those that are owned. So literally the word abd also is used for a slave. Like a slave, somebody that would belong to somebody else, they were also called abd, or a slave. So this is what ibadah constitutes, right? We worship you alone. Now the word worship kind of, is very general. what does it mean, right? Even in English, it's a very general word, what all of that can mean. So we know ibadah is a type of obedience. It's a type of obedience where you're humble, you're fearful, you're out of love of Allah, out of eagerness to get the reward that He has to give. This is ibadah. This is ibadah. This is why you obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the fact that whether or not you obey Him, you're already enslaved. You're enslaved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala anyways. And then you have وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينَ, and we, you alone, we seek your help. Again, when you're asking Allah, you're telling Allah that we worship you, Ya Allah, and you're saying that we want your help. Obviously, in the context, it means we want your help in fulfilling our obligations of this ibadah, of this worship that we are going to make of you. Some other points, interesting points here. Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the word, taught us this dua with the plural. So, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ, we worship. وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينَ, we seek your help. When you're praying, it's you, right, by yourself. Or even if you're in jama'ah, but if you're praying by yourself, it's a singular person, but you're saying it in the plural. So why is it in the plural? Imam Al-Alusi actually has some very interesting insights into this. Number one, he says to keep us humble, right? To keep us humble, that you're not just singling out yourself. That, oh Allah, I worship you and I seek your help. You know, you're not just focusing on I. You're including all that exists besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like he said, He's Rabbil Alameen, right? He is the master of all creation. And so every creation in essence is in worship to Allah, is in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So number one, to humble yourself, you don't say, I worship you and I seek your help. You're not elevating yourself. You're including yourself among all the other creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Imam Al-Alusi said, as a precaution. Because we may actually be worshipping other things besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? It may be possible that one person is involved in worshipping the dunya, worshipping his wealth, worshipping other people, whatever it is that takes him away from obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, have you seen the one who takes his own desire as his object of worship? مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ, whoever takes his own desires as his object of worship. Right? So it may be possible that you're engaged. You think you're worshipping Allah alone, but you might actually be engaged in worshipping other things. So instead of declaring, I worship you and I seek your assistance, right? I worship, you're, as a precaution, he says, you say, na'budu. We worship you because you don't want to exclude just yourself from all of this. So again, this is what Imam Al-Alusi, some of his points that he brought. And also that when you pray in salah, in congregation, right? You're including your brothers and sisters that are with you in the salah. Right? So you say, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينَ, and this is another encouragement for actually praying the salah in congregation. We're praying the salah in congregation because you're using the plural form in Surah Al-Fatiha as well. Now, an interesting part here, this is the surah up until this point and the next ayah, right? So far up until this point, we've heard all praise belongs to Allah, master of all creation, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful, the owner of the day of account, Malik Yawmiddin. And then we did إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينَ, you alone we worship, and from you alone we seek help. Guide us to the straight path, which is the next ayah, right? اهْدِنَا الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمَ, guide us to the straight path. But if you notice, and I want you guys to kind of look at this for a bit, something changes in the surah. And I want you to see if anybody can catch what it is that changes. What is it that changes in the tone or in the way that the surah is progressing?
It becomes second person.
It becomes what?
Second person.
Excellent. And it becomes second person. You're referring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Did you cheat, by the way? No? Okay. You're referring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in third person, right? All praise belongs to Allah, right? Master of all creation. He is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. You say He is the most merciful, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful. He is the owner of the day of judgment. And then all of a sudden it changes to you alone we worship and you alone we seek help, right? So this is something that's called iltifat in Arabic rhetoric. So balagha in Arabic is called iltifat. And this is something that is found in the speech of the Arabs, but in the Quran it's very, very interesting. And it happens for many different reasons, right? So in the English equivalent of this is the word apostrophe. When they do Arabic language studies, they call it apostrophe. And here it specifically changes from third person to second person. And there are different ways that it occurs in the Quran. So from third to second, third to first, first to third, first to second, second to third, but never second to first. That's not found in the Quran. There's a debatable one about that. But these are changes that take place, and it's actually more common than you would imagine. Right? It's actually more common than you would imagine, and it's probably something we gloss over very often, especially if you're just reading a translation of the Quran. Next time you're reading some portion of the Quran, try to focus on this. See if you can catch when there is iltifat, when there is a case of apostrophe, when the person changes. It happens a lot more than we actually notice, and it may be possible that some of the translators in their translation overlook this. It's possible that some of the translators may overlook this, but for the most part, you should be able to catch it even if you're just reading a translation. So this is something that happens, and what does it do? Right? What is the purpose of changing the person or the khitab from third person to second person? So some of the ulama, they say, first of all, it keeps the reader active and attracted by constant change. So it doesn't encourage boredom, basically, right? There's constant change in this. And this is something that, when you have a long speech, for example, or you're talking about something, and you just keep using the pronoun, then in the Arabic language, they would just kind of get tired of it, right? So they would change it up. They would change it up, and they would not just stick with one way of doing things. And also, it causes one more to think more deeply about the meanings. Whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a change, there's a reason He's making the change. Right? And we'll look at what's the reason maybe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the change here from third person to second person. What is it encouraging us to do as well? So Imam As-Suyuti, he says, when the servant mentions Allah, the Most High, and His attributes, each one making him long to be closer to Allah, he finds himself not able to hold back the feeling of calling out to the one who these are His attributes. So he's describing what's happening in Surah Al-Fatiha, right? What should be happening in Surah Al-Fatiha. When you're saying, all praise belongs to Allah, the master of all creation, right? Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful, the owner of the day of judgment. When you're describing these characteristics of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you should have something inside you that says, this is who I want to call out to, right? Who do you worship? This is who I worship. And you have no intermediaries. You can call out directly to Him whenever you want. So after you praise Him and you build up this sense of, this is Allah, this is who He is, this is the power that He has, you immediately go into إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. You alone we worship, and you alone, or your help alone we seek, right? So this is kind of what is happening in Al-Fatiha. It's supposed to be a build-up to something, more emotional. You're praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to get to the point where you're talking to Him directly, right? It also serves as kind of a purification method. Imam Alusi says, mentioning the attributes of Allah brings you to a realization of His greatness. So you go from knowing this to visualizing this. That which was understood becomes witnessed. The hidden becomes apparent. You are rising to a higher level. The level of ihsan, as the Prophet ﷺ described it, أَن تَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. This is the hadith of Rasulullah ﷺ, where he mentioned the three levels of a person's faith. The first is Islam, right, where you testify to the 5 pillars of Islam. The next level is Iman, where you graduate to understanding the 6 pillars of Iman. Belief in Allah, His angels, His books, His messengers, the last day, and in the divine decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the last, or the highest level he described was Ihsan. And Ihsan was, he said, that you worship Allah as if you see Him. You worship Allah as if you see Him, and even though you don't see Him, you worship Him as if He is watching you. Right? So to get to that level, where you're actually performing your worship, where you know that Allah is watching you, or if you could possibly see Allah, you're worshiping Allah as if you could see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is what Surah Al-Fatiha is doing as well. It's taking you up to that level, building you up. You mention the name of Allah, you mention His attributes, His greatness, and then you get to the level where you're worshiping Him as if like He's right in front of you. Right? And then you start talking to Him directly. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. And some of the other ulama, they say that you have to build yourself up. You can't just stand up and start talking like this. That's why you start with this part of Al-Fatiha in the third person, and then it changes to the second person. So this is the beautiful thing about this surah. Beautiful thing about this surah, it happens in the Quran, in many of the ayat, and many of the surahs we read, but we generally overlook it. So next time you're reading some of the Quran, try to catch this, the change in person. It happens more often than you can probably think. It happens quite a few times. So this is إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. And then we have إِهْدِنَا الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. The next ayah which says إِهْدِنَا الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ, translated as guide us to the straight path. But this hidayah, what does it actually mean? When we say guide us to the straight path, again, the English word may not convey the entire meaning of the Arabic, which is hidayah or ih. And these are the meanings that make up the word hidayah in Arabic. So make us steadfast or keep us upon. More than just show us, it's make us firm upon this path. Show it to us, make us recognize this path, and make us able to follow this path. This is what you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're not just asking Him to show you what it is, you're asking Him to make you walk upon it, and you're asking Him to keep you firm upon this path as well. And a question comes up, some of the Mufassirin they bring up, why are we asking for guidance when we are already described as people who are guided? right? So this is a question that might come up. We're asking Allah to guide us, but yet we've already accepted Islam. In a sense, we're already guided. So why is it that we're asking for guidance again? And this is where the meaning of the word hidayah comes in. Again, the Arabs would say to a standing person, قُمْ حَتَّى آتِيكَ. Right? They would say, stand until I come to you. Meaning remain standing. So if a person was already standing, they would say to him, stand up until I come to you, until I reach you. And the purpose is that you remain as you are. You remain as you are. So what this is doing is showing you that linguistically, the word guide us means that you're already guided, but keep us guided, right? Keep us guided, keep us upon that path, and keep us firm upon that path as the meaning came up. And also the believers are in need of constant guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of constant guidance, right? So sometimes we may lose our way, sometimes we fall into sin, sometimes our iman goes up, sometimes it goes down. So it's also a reminder that we are in need of constant guidance. So we're constantly asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, show us the right path. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Guide us the right path. Keep us firm upon the right path and make us able to actually follow this path as well. So that's the word hidayah, right? So then you have the word siratal mustaqim. Now, sirat itself means a path. And it itself means a straight path, by the way. So these are some of the explanations that the Sahaba gave of the word sirat. So, oh Allah, guide us to this path. So what is this path that we're talking about? So the sense sirat refers to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran itself is that path. Or Islam. Or the path leading to Islam, or the path leading to Jannah. Now these are all explanations of the same thing, basically. Right? These are all explanations that kind of talk about the same thing. The path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the message that He sent. Right? Is the message that He sent that will lead you to Jannah. That will lead you to Jannah. So these are the meanings of the word sirat, which in and of itself, the word means path, and the path itself is already straight. It's already a straight path. And mustaqim, it means a path that has no deviations. So a sirat is a straight path, and it has no deviations. Meaning you're not going to go left, you're not going to go right. It guides you towards one specific goal. Right? It guides you towards one specific goal. And there's a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in which he describes this path. He says, indeed Allah has made a parable of sirat al-mustaqima, a straight path. At the sides of the path there are walls with open doors, each door having a curtain, sutur. And there is a collar at the head of the path calling, and a collar above it calling. And this is ayah of the Quran. And Allah invites to the place of peace, the abode of peace, and guides whomever He wills to the straight path. And then the Prophet described, he's giving an image. You're looking down, you see the straight path, and there are doors on the side, and there are curtains on these doors. There are open doors with curtains on them. And there's something at the end of this path calling you, and there's something above that calling you as well. Right? And Allah guides to who He wills to the straight path. So the Prophet said, the doors which are on the sides of the path are the hudud of Allah, the limitations that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set. So no one breaches the hudud except that the curtain is lifted. Meaning Allah, the things that He has made prohibited, that's a representation by those doors with the curtains. So if you go and you remove those curtains and you walk in it, then that's it, right? You're going to fall into that sin. If you stay on the path and you avoid these curtains, you don't even try to see what's behind them, you're going to stay on the straight path. But if you try to move those curtains and look through that door, you're going to get tempted. Right? If you walk through that door, you're going to fall into sins. So He's saying that the curtain, nobody breaches those doors except that the curtain is lifted. And the one calling from above, it is his Lord. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself. And the collar that's at the end of the path, the ulama, they say, they describe the hadith as being the Quran. This Quran is calling you to the straight path. So subhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ gives us an image of what the Sirat al-Mustaqim looks like, right? It's a continuous straight path, doors on the side with curtains. If you cross them, you're falling into the prohibitions which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set. And then the concluding two ayat of the surah, depending again on whether or not, if you count the Bismillah as an ayah, Sirat al-Ladina anamta alayhim, the path of those whom you have bestowed favor upon them, an'amta alayhim. And there's an ayah that explains who these people are. Who are these people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has favored and has given them His favor? So the ayah says, وَمَن يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِم مِّنَ النَّبِيِّينَ وَالصِّدِّقِينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ وَالصَّالِحِينَ وَحَسُنَ أُولَٰئِكَ رَفِيقًا. And whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger, those will be the ones upon whom Allah has bestowed favor. أَنْعَمَ عَلَيْهِمْ, right? Those are the ones Allah has bestowed favor. So when we're asking Allah to guide us to the straight path, we're also giving a model. Who are the people that follow that straight path? We want to do what they did. Make us amongst those people. And these people are the foremost An-Nabiyyin, the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Then Ash-Shuhada, An-Nabiyyin wa Siddiqeen, those who affirm the truth of the prophets. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he was given the title As-Siddiq. As-Siddiq because he, without any doubt, he confirmed the truth of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Confirmed the truth immediately as it came to him. So those who are, steadfast affirmers of the truth, was-shuhada, the people who give up their life, who give up their lives for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, was-salihin, and those who do righteous deeds and good deeds all the time. This is what we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that guide us to the straight path, the path of these people. The path of these people, of the prophets, of the righteous, of the people that affirmed, stood firmly for the prophet, for the message of the prophets, for the people that were willing to give up their lives for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the paths that we want to be guided down. And the rest of the Quran, what does it do? It shows you what their life was like. It tells you stories of the prophets, right? It talks about, the companions of the prophets. It talks about the people who gave up their lives, and it talks about righteous people, right? The Quran talks about righteous. The rest of the Quran is a tafsir of this ayah as well, with the stories, the various stories that come up. Then they explain to you what these people had to go through, what they represented, how they compose themselves, so that's a model that you can follow as well. So Surah Al-Ladina An'amta Alayhim, in the last ayah, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِينَ. Then we say, not the path of those who have earned your anger, or of those who have gone astray. Right? Not the path of those who have earned your anger, nor of those who have gone astray. Now, these are characteristics which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives of two certain types of people. Now, there is a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam which describes those who earned Allah's anger as al-Yahud, as the Jews, or Bani Israel, the followers of Musa alayhi salam, and those who went astray as the Nasara, the Christians, or later on the people that claim to follow Isa alayhi salam, the Prophet, Jesus alayhi salatu wasalam. So again, the purpose is for us not to get caught up in these titles, right? Because what's being given is an example, and we are asking Allah not to let us follow their way. So why was it that these people got the title al-Maghdubi alayhim, and why was it that these people got the title al-Dhalin? Right? So there's a reason, there are characteristics. And when you go into Surah Al-Baqarah specifically talks about Bani Israel, right? The Jews, the story of the followers of Musa alayhi salam, and how it was that they earned Allah's anger, so that we don't fall into it, as a clear example. And then the next surah, Al-Imran, actually focuses on the story of Isa alayhi salam, and talks about the followers of Isa alayhi salam and Christianity and the Trinity and these things, showing you, how their path was, how they were misguided, right? So these are more and more details of this. Obviously, to understand just, the details of this, we have to make a whole study of the next surah anyways, right? To understand what it is. This is why Surah Al-Fatiha is called, the complete surah, Al-Wafiyah, the one that comprises of the entire message of the Quran. In a few ayat, it encompasses the entire message of the Quran. So al-Maghdubi alayhim, those who earn Allah's anger, are characterized with those who knew the truth, yet they refused to follow it. And when you read Surah Al-Baqarah, and you see the behavior of the followers of Musa alayhi salam with him, this is the characteristic you find. They know what's right? They know what's true, they have the scripture, yet they make loopholes and they refuse to follow it. They try to find loopholes and this and that, similarly to us, right? We know what we have to do, we know what's halal, we know what's haram, but we always try to bend the rules, right? Try to bend the rules, try to make this halal, try to make, what's really halal, haram, and all this kind of. This is the behavior of people who earned Allah's anger, because they had clear guidance, this is what you're supposed to do, and they ignored it. And the way that people got misguided is that they did not have much guidance. They did not have much knowledge, yet they tried to do a lot for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? They didn't take the time to, authenticate who is Allah, what does He want from us. They just, it's all actions but no knowledge, whereas the other group is more knowledge and no actions, right? And this is where, we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to make us follow their path, but to make us follow the path of those whom you have bestowed your favor. So that's a balanced path. The balanced path is that you accompany knowledge with actions. Accompany knowledge with actions. That means you basically, for us it means you adhere to the Quran and the Sunnah. Right? The Quran and the Sunnah, which is the knowledge that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Sunnah is a practical application of the Quran itself. So it shows us how to act. The Quran shows us how to act as well. So this is what we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for in the concluding ayat of this surah. This is a dua we're making. After praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, calling out to Him directly, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينَ, guide us to that straight path, that path that we're not going to deviate left and right, the path of the prophets and the righteous and the people that gave up their lives and the people that always affirmed the truth, not the ones of those who knew yet refused to act upon what they knew, and not the path of those who didn't know, didn't bother to know anything, but would just try and go and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala however they wanted to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is how you find that this surah is actually really an entire summary of the entire Quran. It's a summary of the entire Quran, because the rest of the Quran explains the surah. It goes and explains the surah, and then Surah Al-Baqarah, there's a natural connection that this is guidance for the muttaqeen, the people, and you're asking for guidance, and then the initial ayah of Surah Al-Baqarah says, here's the guidance for you, right? And then the rest of the Quran is presented. So up until this point, inshallah, this is the end of just the meanings of Surah Al-Fatiha, what we're asking for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Before I go on just to the next few, I have just maybe 2 or 3 slides to talk about the fiqh of Al-Fatiha. That's what they talk about. But if there are any questions or comments that anybody has, any of the brothers or sisters, please go ahead. Feel free to ask. Inshallah. No? Inshallah. No questions? Alhamdulillah. You know everything. Alhamdulillah. That's good. Alright. So some of the things that come up with Surah Al-Fatiha, not the tafsir part basically, but more of the application part of Al-Fatiha. For example, we say Ameen at the end of Surah Al-Fatiha, right? Is Ameen a part of Surah Al-Fatiha? Is it not part of Surah Al-Fatiha? It's not part of the surah, but it's something that it's a sunnah to say at the end, whether you are praying in salah or out of salah, right? You read Al-Fatiha in or out of salah, it's a sunnah to say Ameen. And what does Ameen mean? It just means, oh Allah, respond. We're begging of you to respond and accept the supplication that we make. That's why after we make dua, we say Ameen, right? And it's important to note that some of the ulama, they point out as well that the way you pronounce Ameen is also important. It's not Ameen with a shadda on the meme, because that's a different word. That's a different word. That means the qasidin, or the people that are seeking or looking for something else. That's what that means. So even the way you say it has to be correct. Sometimes people make a mistake and they'll put a stress on the meme. They'll say Ameen, which makes it into an entirely different word. So it's Ameen, right? With the long A and then just short meme, right? It's as simple as I can put it. Ameen. So it's a sunnah to say it in and out of salah. Again, what does the word sunnah mean? This is why I'm using these words to understand what it is. It's a sunnah to say it. When you say the word sunnah relating to Islamic law, basically it means if you do it, you're rewarded for it. If you don't do it, you're not penalized, right? So this is the word sunnah referring to practice or fiqh or Islamic law, right? So it's a sunnah to say it means you're rewarded if you say it. If you don't say it, you're not penalized for not saying it. There's no sin in not saying it. So it comes up that if you forget to say it in your salah, if you did Surah Al-Fatiha and you didn't say Ameen, you don't have to go back and repeat or anything like that. It's okay. If you're not penalized for not saying it, so you can continue on with your salah. So it may happen that you're reading Surah Al-Fatiha, but you just forget to say Ameen. So it's no big deal if you forget to say Ameen. You just continue on with your salah. Now, do you say it loud or do you say it quiet? Right? This is one of those hot topics, right? Which you just don't want to touch. Do you say it loudly or do you say it quietly? There's difference of opinion, and you can see that the schools of thought are basically divided up on this into 2 camps. The Imam Abu Hanifa and the school of Imam Abu Hanifa and the school of Imam Malik, generally they say that you say Ameen quietly, you don't say it out loud. Right? And again, within each school of thought, there may be scholars that disagree. But generally, the Hanafi school, the Maliki school, they say that you don't say Ameen out loud. Whether you're reading the Fatiha out loud or whether you're reading it quietly, you say Ameen quietly. Right? And they have a narration from one of the Sahaba as an evidence for that. The school of Imam Shafi'i and Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, it says that you say it quietly in the quiet prayers. So Dhuhr, right? You don't just say Ameen out loud, right? After you read Al-Fatiha silently, you just say it silently. And in the prayers where the Imam is reciting loudly, then you say it loudly as well. And there are hadith to support this as well. So if you fall into one of these groups, right? So if you're already following one school of thought, you know what you're doing, right? If you're not, you want to just take my opinion, then the second one, inshallah, is the better. But the Prophet would say Ameen out loud. But again, all of that is acceptable bi'idhnillah, inshallah ta'ala. So we don't make a big deal out of any of these things, inshallah. There's a very interesting story. We're studying Adab al-Ikhtilaf. One of the courses we had to take in a university was the adab. What's the good translation for the word adab?
Ethics of disagreement.
The ethics of disagreement. And we read this story where Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah was actually a student of the students of Imam Abu Hanifa, right? So he studied with them a lot. In the early Hanafi books, the Hanafi books of law, you actually find the opinion of Imam Shafi'i mentioned, which is really interesting. They mention the opinion of Imam Shafi'i, which when he was in Iraq as well, he would study with them. So basically Imam Shafi'i was with his camp somewhere, and he was going to be visited by some of the students of Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah. So he told his students, he says, the students of Imam Abu Hanifa are coming, and they're going to arrive here probably at the time of Maghrib. He said, okay, and we're going to have them one of them lead the salah. And I am telling you, they do not say Ameen out loud after the Fatiha, so I am forbidding you from saying Ameen out loud after the Fatiha out of respect for them, right? Out of respect for them, this is something he said. And so, they showed up and they're arguing who's going to lead the prayer. They refuse to lead the prayer. Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah, leads the prayer. And then he reads the prayer and then he says, وَلَا and then he hears behind him, Ameen, really loud, right? So as soon as the salah is over, he turns around and he said, I told you out of respect for them, we're not going to say Ameen out loud. And his students said, Shaykh, we didn't do it, they did it, right? They're the ones that said Ameen. So it shows you these things are not that big of a deal. The ulama themselves who held these opinions did not make a big deal out of it. So inshallah, both of these things are acceptable. One of the important things about Fatiha is that it must be recited in its entirety. It must be recited in its entirety. That includes all the ayat of Al-Fatiha, all the words in Al-Fatiha, all the letters of Al-Fatiha, and all the vowel sounds. The vowels, meaning the a, e, and u, right? Which we call the fatha, damma, kasra, or zayr, zabr, pesh, for those who speak in Urdu, right? So all of this has to be included in Al-Fatiha. This is why it's extremely, extremely important to learn how to recite Al-Fatiha properly. At least Al-Fatiha. The Fatiha is the thing that you must say in your salah. Every other surah is, it's an option to go beyond that. So the Fatiha must be pronounced properly, to the point where the ulama, they say even every single shadda that comes in Al-Fatiha has to be pronounced properly. So leaving off an ayah would not be acceptable, leaving off a letter would not be acceptable, right? So for example, instead of saying Rabbil Alameen, if you said Rabbil without the shadda, without the stopping and the going, Rabbi, right? Rabbi. If you were to say Rabbi, you've missed one of the ba, because there's two bas, right? You stop on one and then you start the other. So you have to learn to read Al-Fatiha properly. And we've talked about working hard, about being good at our religion. This is something that we have to do. We have to give time to learn how to recite Surah Al-Fatiha properly, because it's a part of the salah. The Prophet said, "La salata liman lam yaqra bi Fatihatil Kitab." There is no prayer for the one who does not read the Fatihatul Kitab, Surah Al-Fatiha, in his salah. So this is something which is very, very, very important. Even if you mess up one of the harakat, one of the vowel sounds, you can change the meaning, right? You can change the meaning. So if you said صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم, أنعمت عليهم is the correct way. If you messed up and you said أنعمت عليهم, then you're saying the path of those who I bestowed favor upon. So you see how that drastically changes the meaning? You're the one claiming the favor accidentally by changing just one way you pronounce one of the letters of the surah. So learning how to pronounce it properly is of extreme, extreme importance. And last but not least, back the wrong way. This is the last one, inshallah. Oh, actually, yeah, okay. Reciting the Fatiha behind the Imam. Right, this is also one of the areas where the ulama, they disagreed. If the Imam is reciting in Salat al-Dhuhr, which is silent, or Salat al-Maghrib, which is out loud, do you recite Al-Fatiha behind the Imam, or do you just stay silent? Again, this is an issue where the ulama, they disagree upon. Generally, the schools of thought fall into this category. Again, within each school of thought, within each madhab, some of the scholars may disagree and hold different opinions. But generally, this is how it breaks down. So in the Hanbali school and the Maliki school, especially the early Hanbali school, you recite Al-Fatiha when in the quiet prayers, meaning Dhuhr and Asr, when everybody's reading quietly, right? When the Imam is reading silently, then you do recite Al-Fatiha and another surah, but you do so silently. And in the prayers where the Imam reads out loud, for Maghrib, Isha, and Fajr, you don't recite Al-Fatiha, and you listen to the Quran that he's reciting. Okay, so this is the first opinion, the first camp, the school of Imam Ahmad and the school of Imam Malik. You do recite in the silent prayers, and you don't recite when the Imam is reciting out loud. And again, there are scholars within this maybe each school that hold different opinions. For example, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen actually holds the opinion that no, you recite out loud either ways, which is the Shafi'i opinion as well. In the Hanafi school of thought, it's you don't recite behind the imam, period. So the recitation of the imam is your recitation, as in one of the hadith. The recitation of the imam is your recitation. So whether it's a silent prayer, whether it's a prayer where the imam is reading loudly, in the Hanafi school, they do not read at all, right? Or they're encouraged not to, they don't have to read Surah Al-Fatiha at all behind the imam. And in the Shafi'i school, you recite it behind the imam regardless, if it's a silent prayer or if it's a prayer where the imam is reciting loudly, right? So even in Maghrib, Isha and Fajr, you would recite Surah Al-Fatiha even with the imam or after the imam is reciting and in the periods where the imam is breaking between the ayat or whatever it is, but you would recite behind the imam regardless. And again, this is generally how each school of thought breaks down. There might be scholars that hold various opinions within each school of thought as well. So again, if you already fall into any of these camps, then you know what to do, right? If you're already a Hanafi, if you're already a Shafi'i, if you're already a Hanbali Maliki, it's easy for you to figure out what you're supposed to do, right? Want to ask my opinion? I generally follow the Hanbali madhab, and I agree with the opinion that when the imam is reciting quietly, you recite as well. And when the imam is reciting out loud, you stay silent and you don't recite because of the ayah in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنُ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنصِتُوا. Right? And when the Quran is recited, then you listen to it and you remain silent. But again, there's difference of opinion as to the application of it, again, within the different schools of thought. But this is something, again, I want to cover. Again, not a big deal. Understand why people are doing different things, right? Why is it that somebody's reciting and I'm not reciting? Or I'm reciting and he's not reciting? Instead of getting upset and worried, at least we understand that different schools of thought have a different opinion in this issue. But all of them require that Fatiha has to be read. If you're praying behind the imam has to read it. If you're praying by yourself, you have to read it. Right? So it's just a difference of opinion on, in Jama'ah, when you're praying in congregation, do you read behind the imam or not? It's not really a big difference of opinion or a big deal at all, inshallah. It's that. So that is the conclusion of Fatiha, alhamdulillah, alameen. If there are any questions or comments that any of you have, inshallah, we'll take them. And we can discuss them with brothers and the sisters, inshallah. So let us know. Any questions?
Just
yes, sir.
comments about the word Ameen. It's not an Arabic word, is it? It's actually from Habash, I think, right?
Allah, I don't know. I didn't look up the root of the word, but I'm not sure myself where it could come from.
Okay.
But some of the scholars, they've described it as being a form of Ya Ameen, which is not a very strong opinion. But they would say that it means Ya Ameen, and then the Ya just gets turned into the long alif, as you know, words tend to get mixed up and changed and things like that. But that's a minority opinion, that it means Ya Ameen, and it's not really strengthened by the scholars of the language. But other than that, Allah, I don't know if it's from a different language or if it's.
I've heard a scholar that says it's not an Arabic word, but it was already.
Yeah, and that's possible. There are discussions actually about words that are in the Quran. The Quran itself describes itself as an Arabic Quran, but then there are words within the Quran which may have roots in other languages, right? So, but they generally say, well, once it becomes part of the language, it's part of the language. So it's considered, as a part of the Arabic language. So like we have words in English that we use commonly, as we know as English words, but they're really words from, other languages and things like that. So it's possible that it has a different root. So, yeah. Do you have some? Did you have a question? Oh, okay. Any other questions or comments, concerns?
Just as a comment,
Yeah.
you mentioned that the hadith says لا فاتحة لمن لا صلاة لمن يقرأ فاتحة الكتاب. If the one of the followers came and he followed the imam, and the imam said Allahu Akbar and he went to ruku', and he followed him and he catch him in ruku'. So is this rak'ah considered or not considered?
Yeah, so this is one thing that, this is the one exception. This is the one exception to the rule. According to the ones that say you have to recite Fatiha behind the imam, this is the one exception. That if you come late and the imam is in the ruku', then there's a hadith of one of the Sahaba radiallahu anhu, he came in and he joined, and they asked the Prophet later on, I believe the wording is when أدرك الركعة فقد أدرك الصلاة, or كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم, that whoever catches the imam in the ruku', then he has caught that rak'ah. Right? So that's the exception to the rule. That if you came and you catch the imam in the ruku', you make ruku', then the Fatiha is basically forgiven for you, right? And the other hadith kind of back it up, that the qira'ah of the imam is the recitation of the imam is your recitation, and all this kind of stuff. So Jazakallah khair. Yeah, that's an exception to the rule of Al-Fatiha, that if you catch the imam in ruku', then you're exempt from having to recite Al-Fatiha and from doing whatever came before in that rak'ah, and you're counted as having prayed that rak'ah, right? And then you can get out of it. Yeah.
Actually, this question came to the Imam Shafi'i and they asked this question.
Sahih.
So
Yeah.
that he said, yeah. So I got the answer. He told him, he told the one who was asking, he said, I got the answer, he got the idea, the comment that if he says you cannot read, your salah not accepted if you don't read
Al-Fatiha.
And this accepted, he said, I got the answer.
So they challenged Imam Shafi'i.
No, they were just joking.
Oh, okay, they were
just as a comment, and Shafi'i mashallah was very, very polite. He said, I got the answer, don't worry.
Yeah, so this is the exception. I think this rule is basically agreed upon all four schools of thought, that if you catch the ruku, you've caught that rak'ah counts for you, inshallah.
And
No.
last class you were mentioning that Jibreel alayhi salam, that he was coming when one of the Sahaba, his name is Dahya Kalbi.
Dihyatul Kalbi. That's the name of the Sahabi, yes.
He was
Jazakallah
a
khair.
very handsome man and was very...
The very first one, this was 2 weeks ago, mashallah, you remember, I think I remember. The name of the Sahabi was Dihyatul Kalbi. He was a very beautiful companion, and we talked about how Jibreel alayhi salam would come sometimes in the form of an angel, which was difficult on the Prophet sallallahu, and sometimes he would communicate the Quran in the form of a man. And the shape that he took, or the form that he took, was of Dihya al-Kalbi, radiyallahu anhu, who was a very, very handsome-looking companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Jazakallah khair for that. That fills in the gap from the first the first session. Alhamdulillah. Any other questions, inshallah? Any of the sisters have any questions? 3, 2, 1. Okay. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خير.
جزاكم الله خير.
وإياكم.
لا لا